What's up, everyone? Jason Gilbo here with Rob Mazaika, taking a look at tonight's six-game NBA slate. A good one here. And first thing I noticed, as far as Vegas goes, every team total up over 100, no spread. That's more than 5 points. That's kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah, hopefully the slate tonight is a lot funner than the one last night. Last night it was basically a crapshoot if you didn't have Holiday, Irving, Terrence Jones, or any of the guys like that. But tonight it presents a lot of value, a lot of good plays, a lot of high totals. It should be a fun one.
Yeah, definitely. We got a couple situations as far as rotation goes that we've broken down over the last few days, but we'll kind of touch on that as we go through. Point guard, we're still dealing with the Tony Parker injury. We're also looking at Emmanuel Mudiay being out, and Ricky Rubio's back, but outside of that, it's kind of pretty standard procedure from the last few days.
Yeah, it's just the same as last night. We got the guys like Patty Mills filling in for Tony Parker. He should get about I don't know, maybe 25 minutes in this matchup against the Raptors, which it could be a close game, but it all depends on basically if Ginobili plays and the other guys.
Yeah, definitely. You're looking at basically Murray, Ginobili, and Mills kind of being the back three options there. And then we're still dealing with the Rivers, Felton, Rivers and Crawford there is kind of the three that we're looking at.
Yeah, for the Clippers guards, we recommended Felton last night, and Rivers was the one who outperformed. So maybe tonight's the Felton night. I'm perfectly fine going back to well on him, and he's 500 cheaper on FanDuel.
Yeah, definitely. And a guy that I'm looking at, kind of as a pivot, I feel like it's going under the radar tonight is Marcus Smart. I'm just kind of looking at to pivot with him, especially in tournaments, because I think the ownership will be a little bit lower. And I'm looking at that when Boston Washington is the highest team total on the night. I'm expecting a lot of kind of back and forth play, especially between the guards there. So with his defensive upside, I think he's got a reasonable floor, but I like him a lot.
Yeah, I agree. You pointed him out to me earlier. He wasn't really on my radar, but now that I'm starting to look into him, like he shot 15 shots last game, and this is my favorite game in the night to target because we know they're both very efficient offenses, and it's going to be a high-scoring affair. And Marcus Smart is a good contrarian way to get exposure to it.
Yeah, definitely. A couple new situations. We're looking at Orlando with those guys being out. Fournier, doubtful, DJ Augustine, questionable. For me, I kind of like the other options. I know CJ Watson's probably going to be the guy who steps up and sees about 30 minutes, but they're better options kind of around that range.
Yeah, CJ Watson, he's a shooting guard in FanDuel, but I don't mind using him, especially after the game he had last game. He got, 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's a good option. A cheap play on FanDuel at point guard is Jameer Nelson because Mudiay, I don't think he's going to play tonight at all. And even though it's a very tough matchup for Nelson, he's only 3,700, and he should see maybe around 30 minutes tonight, and he could hit his value.
Yeah, definitely could. We saw Utah obviously on a back-to-back, going to Denver now. We're looking at probably 28-plus minutes there for Nelson.
Yeah, and then my favorite pay-up option tonight is Isaiah Thomas. Like we said before, Marcus Smart, this is my favorite game of the night. And Isaiah Thomas, he leads the league in fourth quarter scoring. I talked about him in the article, and I think him and Wall are going to go back and forth this entire game.
Yeah, that game for me, the 2 point guards are certainly my favorite options. Especially with Eric Bledsoe's price on the rise. I do like Kyle Lowry on FanDuel at 8,400. He's about $1,000 cheaper than those guys. And with DeMar DeRozan out, I think if that game stays close, Lowry's going to have a lot to do with it.
Yeah, he gets a big usage bump with DeRozan now. He averages about 1.2 fantasy points per minute more than he does when DeRozan's on the floor, when DeRozan's out. So he should be in a good spot to reach his value. It's just if that game stays close because it's the Spurs.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the only game, it's not predicted to be a blowout, but if that's the one I'm looking at tonight to be a blowout, it's probably that one just because DeRozan's out.
Yeah, same here.
So, moving over to shooting guard, not a great spot tonight. DeMar DeRozan's out, probably tomorrow as well, or the next time they play. We're looking at guys like Dwayne Wade, Bradley Beal, Booker as your pay-up options, but not tremendous. I don't feel great about those guys. I don't mind them. Beal's probably my favorite out of the group, though.
Beal is probably my favorite, too, because, I really like that game, and I'm probably going to try to get as much exposure as possible to that game because that's probably, in my opinion, that's going to be the highest scoring of the night.
Yeah, I think so, too.
Yeah, and then a guy I wrote up in the article is Zach LaVine. I know Ricky Rubio's coming back from his injury tonight or sickness or whatever it was, but LaVine's still probably going to play his 35 minutes, and he actually doesn't lose much usage with Rubio off the floor. So he should be all right. And it's a matchup with Phoenix where he could absolutely score 30 real points in it.
Yeah, I like Levine a lot. I think in terms of a bounce back spot, he's due. 'Cause, he's been in a little bit of a shooting slump of late, but Phoenix, 27th against shooting guards and defensive efficiency. We always like to kind of target, especially Phoenix because of their pace.
Yeah, Phoenix is not much different than Brooklyn with their pace, so I like targeting them.
Yeah, definitely. And outside that, we got JJ Redick, Jamal Crawford. I feel like are kind of the value options once again. Crawford definitely shot a little bit better last night, 9 of 20. So definitely bounce back there and gets a matchup that's pretty decent against Philly.
I still like Crawford even with the potential return of Blake Griffin tonight. I think that might lower his ownership a little bit more. Both Redick and Crawford, they're in good spots. It's Philly. But like I said, I prefer the cheaper option with Crawford.
Yeah, I do too. With DeRozan out, Norman Powell's going to be likely a guy who picks up a little bit more minutes. San Antonio's been surprisingly bad against shooting guards this year.
Yeah, they haven't. They've been giving up to a couple big games to shooting guards across the league. I actually like Terrence Ross a little bit more than Norman Powell tonight, just because he gets a little bit more run with DeRozan out. But we've seen Powell perform in games where DeRozan's missed before.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone else you like here?
Gary Harris, I have a little bit of interest in. It's a tough matchup, and if Gary Harris if he doesn't have a limit restriction tonight, which I don't expect him to, since he played 35 minutes last time out, if he can get over 30 minutes and he's only 5K, he should at least hit his value.
Yeah, I think so too. Moving over to small forward. You and I were talking before the show. A lot of options here at this position, and a lot of guys in that mid range that I'm really really intrigued with.
Yeah, this position's surprisingly loaded, but as you just mentioned, that mid-range option is where we're looking between 5 and 7K on FanDuel, and there's about like 6 guys so I'm intrigued in, but I think most of them are going to end up around maybe the 25 fantasy point range, which is good, but I want a guy who can get me 40 fantasy points in a tournament.
Yeah, I think so. And if we're looking at two guys in that mid range, we can talk about Ingles here and Terrence Ross first. 4,000, 4,200 on FanDuel. Around that same price on DK. Those are probably your guys that are going to be in that 20 to 25 fantasy point range.
I agree. It's just they're a lot cheaper than the other guys, like, Wilson Chandler, Aaron Gordon, TJ Warren, PJ Tucker, all in that range. Ingles and Terrence Ross are cheaper. So if you really want to punt the position, those are 2 guys I would do it with.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we kind of get into Aaron Gordon, Robert Covington, Jake Crowder. Those guys are sent with a little bit more upside just in terms of potential tonight.
I agree. My favorite's probably Covington, especially if both Embiid and Okafor are out. He gets a huge bump in usage. We saw him. He's been shooting the ball better lately, getting more rebounds. He only needs about almost 30 fantasy points to hit his value, and I think he could get that tonight. And he's got upside for 40 fantasy points too.
Yeah, it definitely does. And you look at that Boston-Washington game, both small forwards in play. Otto Porter's, absolutely gone off against Boston in 2 games. I think he's averaged 27 real points in both matchups. And I went in to look and I was like, was someone out? I was like, maybe Beal was out, but no, it was a full, healthy Washington team, and he's just crushed them both times.
Yeah, the Celtics, they're having a tough time guarding Porter this year. Porter actually leads the NBA in a 3-point shooting percentage, which is a little surprising because he was never really thought of as like this elite 3-point shooter, but there he is leading the league at like 45.4%, just passing Joe Ingles.
Yeah, superstar Joe Ingles.
Yeah, superstar. It's an up-paced game. It's going to be a fast-paced game, high scoring. It fits his style completely. He loves playing. He's a little bit like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, just a little bit better. So these fast-paced games really benefit him.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really intrigued with him. I think he's one of my favorite overall kind of mid-range plays on the slate. Moving up to kind of pay-up options, how do you feel about Wiggins tonight?
He gets a little downgrade for me with the return of Rubio, but I still don't mind him.
Yeah, hard to not like anyone really against Minnesota or against Phoenix. In terms of pay-up, I think Kawhi is kind of the guy that I'll be looking to get exposure to.
Yeah, Kawhi is the go-to option if you're paying up. He rested last night against the Nets, and the Spurs still pretty much won by 30. But he's been on a tear, over 30 real points in his last 6 games. He can make it 7 tonight. He's been shooting the ball great, doing everything. He's quietly becoming the big superstar in this league.
Yeah, definitely. Up over 10K on FanDuel. I didn't think we'd really see the day, but here it is. And I still don't mind on tonight's 6-game slate paying that price.
I don't mind it either. He's a tournament-only option for me because he's 10,100 on FanDuel. That's a higher price to pay for him. It's just he's been performing, so he's a good tournament play.
And I think if we're paying over 10K, it's for Wall and probably Towns. I kind of prefer those two out of the three.
Yeah, I do too.
So, moving over power forward, and I mean this one, there are some cheap options, but once again, I feel like this is an area where you can get with the mid range and get some upside too.
Yeah, power forward. It's fairly weak tonight. We got Jokic at the top, but his minutes have been down lately. It's a very tough matchup against Utah, so I'm really not looking his way. Plus, his price is just way too high for me, especially in this matchup. I'm looking toward a mid-range options like Markieff Morris, Ursan Ilyasova, David Lee again, and even going down to Dario Saric if we really need to go that low.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Sarch is the guy who gets a big bump with Embiid out, and the guy who hasn't shot particularly well over the last few games, but is a guy who's still going to continue to shoot. Definitely has some upside. For me, I mean, in terms of a pay up option, it's just Aldridge, and I feel like his price isn't even really considered a pay up option, even though it's in the 7K range. Him and Lee are obviously great options.
Yeah, the only thing is that kind of concerns me with Aldridge is that he had so much usage last night that maybe he defers a little bit to Leonard tonight.
It could be something. I mean, you really look, if you don't expect Aldridge to get all that much, I mean, the fact that Lee's basically $2,000 cheaper, with 25 to 30 fantasy point kind of potential there, you get a good savings.
Yeah, Lee is probably your cash game option if you want to. He's safe. He's probably gonna get you at least his 5x. He's only 5,100 on FanDuel. His price is reasonable. Going up, Blake Griffin returns tonight. What do you think of him?
I like him in GPPs. I mean, I like that price tag, one, because it's a little bit lower. 7,400 on FanDuel, 76 on DK. It's not that bad. If he's in that 28 to 30 minute range, I'm fine with kind of firing away in tournaments.
Same here. The only question is his minutes. Like if he can get 30 minutes at 7,400 against the Sixers, he's still Blake Griffin. Chris Paul is out. The usage will be there. He should hit his value, and he actually has 50-point ceiling in only 30 minutes.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, he's a guy who contributes across the stat sheet. So yeah, that's basically one guy that I'll be keeping a close eye on as we kind of go up to lock time.
Same here. And then the other two guys I mentioned before, Markieff Morris and Ursan Ilyasova. Markieff 6,400 on FanDuel in that that Washington-Boston matchup. He's been playing some of the best basketball in his career lately, scoring over 30 fantasy points in his last 7-8 games, and he should have no issue doing it again. And then we've seen games where Embiid is out where Ilyasova just absolutely goes off.
Yeah, I mean, both those guys, 6,300 and 6K on DraftKings, right in the mid-range where it just kind of fits in if you're going with that balanced approach. And both those guys, have been playing well, and I like their upside.
I like them both too.
So, moving to center, in terms of a pay up, I just feel like it's Towns out of that whole group. There's a couple mid-range guys, but Towns is a guy that I'll be looking to plug in. There's a lot of value, great matchup. He's crushed Phoenix, in his career so far, and he's been absolutely on a tear as well.
Yeah, Towns, Phoenix, they don't really have anyone who can match up with him. They have Tyson Chandler, but I think Towns is just too skilled for him at this point, and he's the second most expensive player on FanDuel, but he has as much upside as anyone else.
Yeah, and he's been consistently kind of been a 50-point producer, fantasy point producer over the last, 10 games or so. So been really solid. DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin coming back, that kind of drops him down for me a little bit. I know you said the same before we were talking. Outside of that, I feel like Al Horford might be the next step down for me.
Yeah, same here. I love that game, but we don't really see Al Horford get, those big 45 fantasy points games, but he's perfectly capable of doing it. He did it in Atlanta before.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's a good cash game guy if you're kind of going with a different approach tonight. He's going to be a guy who gets 30 to 35 fantasy points. We might see a 40, plus point game, but, if you're expecting that GPPs are building multiple lineups, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I agree there. Another guy a little bit more expensive is Rudy Gobert. He's pretty much a walking double-double. He'll get one every game. Denver, they present a pretty tough matchup for bigs, but Gobert is a different breed of a big. He's so big and lengthy that he can rack up the block shots in a hurry.
Yeah, he's a guy who's just uber consistent. I like his price a little bit more on DK, but I don't mind him on both sides.
Yeah, he's a tournament-only option for me on FanDuel just because his price is pretty high. And then if you're thinking of going down the value, if Okafor plays, he's a decent value if there's no minutes restriction or anything. But Robin Lopez is probably your go-to cheap guy on the night at the position. He's consistently hit his value in the last 8 games. He should have no issue doing it again against Orlando, who gives up some big games to centers here and there.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I mean, Orlando, not a good rebounding team, really. Vucevic is a guy who doesn't really necessarily play that defense when he's out there playing 25 plus minutes. In a good spot, I think, really, you know, Tyson Chandler's price has come up a little bit now. We don't really have a tremendous center option. I think Lopez is really that guy.
I agree there. And then I got one little crazy option. Kelly Olynyk, if you want to, get cheap exposure to the Celtics Wizards game, it's a good contrarian way to go. He sees about 25 minutes a game and in an up-paced matchup, and if his shot's falling, he could certainly have a good game.
Yeah, he's always that perfect wacky GPP play because he's either going to get you 15 or he's going to get you 30 plus. Like he just never sits really in the middle range.
Yeah, I've seen him on a ton of GPP winning teams at spots where I wasn't even considering him before, but he's getting to the point where he's only 4,100 and in an up-paced game, he's certainly in consideration for me in tournaments.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, pretty good rebounder as well. So, I mean, if you can get that scoring going, he'll be solid.
Yeah, that's all I have at the position, though. Do you have anyone else?
I don't think so. I think a lot of these guys are kind of off the table. Not really looking at Vucevic or Valanciunas or those guys tonight.
Yeah, same here.
So, who do you guys your highest scorer on the night?
My highest score, it's I think Isaiah Thomas takes it for me tonight. Just the way he's been playing, he's going to get up big after the little confrontation after the last game these two played. He's insane. He's an all-star. He's actually one of my favorite players in the league to watch right now. He's been really good.
Yeah, I like him a lot tonight. My favorite point guard. I'm going to go with Karl-Anthony Towns as the top guy, though.
Yeah, that's a fair option.
Yeah. If we're not taking real high risk guys here, we're just playing it safe.
Exactly.
So that's going to wrap things up here. Be sure to check out the rest of our NBA content at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Yeah, good luck, everyone. Keep sending those screenshots on the way.